Philosophy, honoris causa, honoring Mr. Aנחel Gurria, Secretary General of the OECD. Honored guests, Mr. Aנחel Gurria and his wife, Dr. Lulu Gurria. Minister of Finance, Dr. Yובל Shteynitz. Ambassador of Mexico, His Excellency Federico Salas. Vice Chairman of the Board of Governors, Mr. Michael Yitzhar. President of the University of Haifa, Professor Aharon Ben-Zeev. Rector, Professor David Faraji. University Management, Deans, and guests. Thank you all for coming here today to take part in this exciting ceremony. We will open our event with a unique panel discussion on growing inequalities, strategies, and solutions. At this rare opportunity, 4 of our honored guests will be contributing from their areas of expertise. But first, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Orit Karnieli Miller. I graduated with a degree of social work from this university and am now a faculty member in the Department of Community Mental Health here at the University of Haifa. My research focuses on creating partnerships and collaboration between patients and healthcare providers. I work toward identifying best practices of communication in healthcare meant to improve healthcare outcomes and decrease inequality in health. This is done through focusing on vulnerable populations such as mental health patients and elderly. You, Mr. Gurria, have succeeded in developing partnerships and identifying best practices toward global change. We, in the field of social welfare and health science, are also committed to global change through an emphasis on humanistic values, on caring, and on compassion. We and you must continue to work towards strengthening relationships and reaching out to other cultures and human beings in order to find common pathways toward a better world. And now, I would like to invite Professor Aharon Ben-Zeev to say a few words.
Honorable guests and friends, Secretary General Aנחel Gurria, besides being such a good friend to Israel, you are a man of great integrity and ability. And on a more personal note, you are a very charming person as well. Is he? Very much so. Other qualities of him will be revealed in due course. Of course, the Honorable Minister of Finance shares these wonderful qualities. Besides being a very honest man of great intellect, he is also a great friend to the university. And now on to a few remarks concerning the issue of the symposium. It is often assumed that a reduction in inequality would lead to a drop in the level of envy. I believe that this assumption is incorrect and that, on the contrary, when inequalities are decreased, the level of envy increases. It would appear that the desire to eliminate inequality, that is, our inferior position, is an important component of envy. In consequences, 2 different claims have been raised regarding the envy and inequality relationship. First, the basis for envy is a concern for equality, thus a reason for condemning this concern. B, reducing inequality will reduce envy, thus a reason for praising the concern for equality. Both claims are, in my view, wrong, as reduction in inequality does not decrease envy. The central concern in envy is different from the egalitarian moral concern that calls for the reduction or even elimination of different inequalities. No doubt, by fulfilling the desire underlying envy, namely gaining what someone else has, we may become equal to this person in this respect. But this is not what the egalitarian moral concern amounts to. Envy differs from the egalitarian moral concern in at least two major ways. First, it involves a partial rather than a general concern. Envious people are not concerned with equality as a general value. The claim of equality is merely a desire to improve our personal situation, and thus does not appear when inequality favors us. Second, envy also surfaces in cases where the demand for equality is not feasible and has nothing to do with egalitarian moral principles. For example, when I envy the beauty of Mr. Gurria and Dr. Shtainitz, there is nothing here of moral concern and nothing here to change. I cannot change myself and you cannot change yourself. Okay, the main reason that the process of reducing inequalities usually lead to a rise in the intensity of envy is the importance of the comparative concern in envy. Many people observe that envy is directed at those who are similar or equal to us. Francis Bacon said, where there is no comparison, no envy. And therefore, kings are not envied, but by kings. And beggars envy merely other beggars. In envy, our attention is focused on those perceived to be immediately above us. Since these people occupy the first steps we will have to climb on the fortune's ladder. These are the people who are most likely to be compared with us and whose accomplishments are most likely to demean us. It is a kind of neighborhood envy, where each person envies the one who is closer to him. Those who are close to us, but still above us, emphasize our own inferiority, more than do those who are distant for us. Reducing inequality may lead to a more just society. Such a society may witness a rise in the level of envy, nevertheless. Whatever the social and moral advantages of reducing inequalities may be, a decrease in envy is not part of them. If we are to witness a reduction in social and economic inequalities, we should expect the problem of envy to become more prominent. When social and economic gaps are large, the probability of rage, hate, frustration, and various types of violent reactions are greater. When these gaps narrow, such reactions are reduced while envy usually intensifies. I want to say that I'm not against reducing inequalities, but I just indicate that there are some risks we should think about while reducing inequalities. Thank you.
And now, as I promised, I would like to ask our special panel to take a seat on the stage to enlighten us with a discussion on growing inequalities, strategies, and solutions. Please welcome Mr. Aנחel Gurria, Secretary General of the OECD. Dr. Yuval Shtainitz, Minister of Finance. Mr. Sever Plotzker, Senior Economics Reporter for Yediעות, אחרונות. And Dr. Ronnie Sטריאר of the Faculty of Social Welfare and Health Sciences. Moderating this panel discussion is Dr. Ronnie Sטריאר of the School of Social Work. His areas of interest are poverty and social exclusion, the working poor in Israel, and anti-poverty strategies. Dr. Sטריאר is the director of the חיפה Partnership for Eradication of Poverty, a program established in 2005, sponsored by the University of חיפה with the cooperation of חיפה Municipality Welfare Services. So please welcome Dr. Sטריאר to introduce the panel.
Deeply pleased to moderate this panel with our distinguished guests. Mr. Aנחel Gurria, Secretary General of the OECD, Dr. Yuval Shtayinitz, the Israeli Minister of Finance, and Mar Sever Plotzker, a leading economic journalist from Yediעות, אחרונות. I see this panel as a unique opportunity to share our views and ideas on one of the most critical issues concerning the international community and the Israeli society: the growing inequalities between the rich and the poor. This is a unique opportunity, as it is not taken for granted that leading figures in the economic scene are ready to be confronted with such questions of our time: the rising inequalities and the persistence of poverty. As you have said, Mr. Gurria, in many opportunities, and I quote you, growing inequalities polarize societies. It divides regions and countries between the rich and the poor. We share with you your deep concern. So we want to show you a short film that introduces one of our programs in conjunction with the social services of the municipality of Haifa. The vision of this program is to create a community of concern which crosses national, social, ethnic, religious barriers, centered on the common goal of addressing the alarming and ever-increasing levels of poverty among families and children in Israel.
Every third child in Israel lives below the poverty line. The growing polarization between rich and poor is ongoing and may in time prove to be an existential threat to our society. To overcome this and to alleviate the suffering of many Israelis, the University of Haifa took up this national challenge, introducing the Partnership for the Eradication of Poverty program.
So the project has developed new knowledge regarding interventions and policies with people living in poverty. This is a new model of using the university as a platform for social change.
The mission of the Partnership program is to develop leaders and scholars who will advance the well-being of populations and communities at risk, promoting social change in both Jewish and Arab communities.
נכנסנו כולנו, נרתמנו לאיזה משהו שהוא גדול יותר מכולנו, בלי ההבדלים, בלי הצבעים. ההורים שלי עלו מאתיופיה, וגם אני נחשפתי לעוני, ובגלל זה לא היה זר בשבילי להגיע לפרויקט כזה וממש להשתלב ולהיכנס לפרויקט. זה לא היה לי זר, זה לא היה לי מאיים, זה לא היה לי מפחיד.
Based on the shared commitment of students, faculty members, social workers, and families, the program serves society through the development of knowledge in education, research, scholarship, service innovation, and advocacy.
יש בישראל אנשים עניים, ותיגעו בזה, ותחוו את זה, ותעשו עם זה משהו. זה אני חושבת מה שהפרויקט מנסה לעשות. הוא מנסה לעשות שינוי שהוא bottom up.
We feel that we are in the right road to develop a new leadership, professional leadership, social leadership of the new generations of leaders of the Israeli community.
The school's unique program introduces new knowledge related to intervention and social services and is helping to create the next generation of exemplary social workers and educators who are leading the fight to eradicate poverty in Israel.
As you know, Mr. Aנחel Gurria, this government have decided that the higher education annual budget will be gradually increased in the next 6 years. But until the monies come, we have to make multiple tasks and many difficult tasks here. And one of the most difficult tasks will be put some limits in your times, because we are very, very short in time. So I will ask just 2 questions, and you will have just 3 minutes at the most to give us your answers, and then we will open the floor for 2 or 3 questions from the students, and I see some students that are activists in this project that we show you. So the format will be that I will ask the questions, then we will go in this order, and then if I have something wise to say, I will try to say it. The first question is, in light of both the impressive growth of the Israeli gross domestic product in the last year and the persistent increase of social inequality, what Israel government should do to change the trend of growing inequality, the concentration of wealth in the hands of few, and the redistribution of income? For instance, the OECD has urged Israel to change national fiscal policies. Israel was in 2007 in 3rd place in the rate of indirect taxation among OECD countries, and in 23rd place in direct taxation. What has to be done in order to establish a more constructive, progressive policy in terms of poverty alleviation and closing social inequalities? Mr. Aנחel, Gurria.
We published a book called OECD Reviews of Labor Market and Social Policies, in the case of Israel in particular. And we were remarking that if you put together the population of the Arab Israelis, and then you add the ultra-Orthodox, the Bedouins, and in the immigration that also comes from Ethiopia, you have there, well, 1.5 million of citizens, more or less, maybe even more, close to 2 million, out of a total population that is less than 8 million, 7.5. So that means that when you're talking about equality, when you're talking about policies that can make the Israeli society more equal, regardless of the level of envy, I have to say there, effectively, you have to think about integrating this enormous percentage of the population. It just happens to be an enormous number. Now, so think about it in moral terms, think about it in ethical terms, but just think about it in purely economic terms. Without the full integration of this enormous number, given the total population of Israel, clearly Israel will not be able to take off. And there will be a divided society, as we called the subtitle of our study is A Divided Society. And it will be like an anchor, like a weight on the Israeli society that will not let it take off, that will not let it fly, and therefore will not let it develop faster. Now, there are questions that have to do with the labor market, clearly things that have to do with, yes, with taxation, but mostly with education. Education, the access to education, but then if people do not want to accede to the labor market, people do not want to be educated, or people do not want to make contributions, the question is, how do you align incentives? And then, even when you break it down, for example, in the case of the Hadadim, the question is, the women already are participating more and more, although their participation is lower than the average of the women in society, and the pay is less, but the question is, how do you integrate more, of course, the men? In the case of the Arab Israelis, you have a very low participation of the women. You have to increase the labor participation of the women. And there are specific issues, targeted practices that you can do. But let me put it in the other way around. Today, the societies are aging. Everybody is becoming older. The greatest problem is, where do you get the supply of labor? Where do you get the supply that is going to continue with the growth in the future? Israel is blessed with the fact that they have this very large amount of available talent and available labor force that they can integrate going forward. Therefore, rather than the problem of scarcity, you have a problem, of course, of integration. And of course, this is the first step towards reducing these inequalities. The sense of belonging, the sense of ownership, the sense of sharing, which has to be done, and as I said, by using all the instruments available to the state.
Okay, good morning. As the president of the university, allow me to steal few seconds just to say a few words about Secretary General Gוריה, and then I'll refer to the topic, okay? It's really a pleasure for me. I'm very delighted to be here always, because I love this university. And I always feel like sacrificing, not being here lecturing philosophy, but doing other things, also quite important. But I'm especially delighted to be here with our friend, and my friend, may I say, Aנחel Gוריה. When I was appointed finance minister a year and a half ago, we were already 15 years in the process of approaching to the OECD, of being integrated accession process. But I have been told that today, with the international, in the international arena, especially after the Goldstone report, the Israeli-Arab conflict, which is not over yet, it is mission impossible to be fully accepted. The man who did it possible was certainly Aנחel Gוריה, with his enthusiasm and wisdom. And 1 year ago, when it was clear that Israel is meeting already all the benchmarks and all the criteria, and that Israel, on pure criteria, Israel belonged to the developed countries and to the OECD, Aנחel Gוריה did the impossible possible by doing something very important. He made it clear to the OECD, once Israel was really prepared, that this is not only test case to Israel to be accepted, but it is also test case to the OECD to accept Israel. Because the OECD is known for its impartiality, for being an organization with objective criteria, and he told them, if Israel does fit to the OECD and we fail to accept it, it is our failure, not just Israel's failure. And I think that this method, he was conveying this method, that this is test case to Israel, but also to the OECD. He made it possible for Israel to be accepted finally to the OECD. And I think that we all have to thank him. He is really a great friend of Israel and a very decent and honest person. And I'm very grateful and delighted to be here with you, Aנחel. And now to the topic of poverty and inequality in the Israeli society, and how to narrow gaps, which is one of the main topics. We can speak on short range and longer range. On short range, the main struggle all over the world in those spatial years, those are not regular times. All over the world, governments are having only one, the Western world, one thing in mind. It's not even narrowing gaps or reducing inequality. Is something which is very important to the economy, but also to the society, reducing unemployment. In this atmosphere of global economic crisis, the priority of governments in Europe and United States, in the developed world, also in Israel, is to reduce unemployment. So if we are speaking on short range, my priority as finance minister, before other priorities, is to secure economic growth and to reduce unemployment and to restrain unemployment so it won't get up again to European or American levels of between 10 and 20%. This is very important also from social point of view, to reduce unemployment. Then we have to narrow gaps. And here I completely agree with what Mr. Gוריה hinted at. You have two ways of narrowing gap. First, if the country have enough resources, you can share it with people. But this will help only in the short range. Maybe 2 years, 3 years later, you won't have enough to share, or maybe by sharing and giving too much social payment, you will encourage people not to work. And this already happened in Israel past. Thinking to how to narrow gaps and to narrow inequality seriously, You have to think to the long range. Future is more important than present, in a sense. And here we know from our own experience and from the experience of other countries that the most important thing, not the only thing, but the most important thing is education. High-level education for everybody, in schools, in universities, in colleges, and making sure that people from all groups and all parts of the society are well integrated. Here we have to put special emphasis, this is clear, on better integration in the economy in general and in high-quality education that produces human resources that is so important in the Israeli economy, in our exporting industries, in the advanced industries. Here we have to put special emphasis among Israeli Arabs to improve education among Israeli Arabs and education, especially higher education among ultra-Orthodox Jews, because most of them are not getting at all to universities or colleges. And I think we just started, and we are putting more money. We made a dramatic cut in the defense budget this year for the first time after many years in order to deliver more money to universities and colleges. But this is just a start, and we have to proceed. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Several.
Thank you, Ronnie. You ask a question, I'll provide a very short answer. I think the government should listen to the people. That's what it should do. It took us, I think, the public opinion leaders and the press more or less 10 years to explain to the Israeli public opinion that we do have a problem of poverty and a problem of inequality. Next, it took us another 5 years to explain who are the poor people. It was not such a simple thing. Now, our mission, our role is much more complicated. It's to explain to the Israeli people, and to the Israeli government, that the high standard of living of the Israeli population is in huge danger until the huge gaps in the Israeli society are substantially reduced. The Israeli middle class, that's our role to explain to it, cannot count on prosperity until the prosperity is widely shared. Now, this is, as I said before, the role of the Israeli press, and the role of the government is to listen to the Israeli press and to the Israeli people. OECD, with its studies, was very helpful, I think. It put a mirror before our faces. Now we can see ourselves as the world sees us, that we are a very developed country, but a very, very divided country. And now we know it. It makes me very optimistic. Now we know, now the government knows, that we will not be as rich as Denmark without being as equal as Denmark.
I will just add a few comments. I'm sitting here with three people that are very focused on economy. I am a qualitative researcher of poverty, and I just want to transmit to you one of the sense that I have with all other colleagues when we go through interviews with people living in poverty, and when they see the government, their perceptions of the government is that the government actually serves the wealthy, the elites, the economic elites, and they feel that they don't belong to this country. They feel isolated, and they need a hope. They need an horizon of hope. And I think that this is, I think that the lives of the poor are in a culture of silence, and they are often marginalized from taking and I think that they should inform policy. They have to regain a sense of confidence in the government and in the country, and this is very important that we are open to their voices. I want just to say that there are many things that we haven't talked here, and one of them is that Israel needs a healthy social security net. I think that these things were being heavily vilified under the discourse of neoliberalism. Social rights, work as a social right, housing as a social right. I think that this is the kind of response that we need to offer, to provide the increasing sectors of the Israeli society that are living in the midst of a very wealthy society, but without an horizon of hope. I will go to the second question about the relationship between work and poverty. Work is seen as the key to alleviate poverty. However, we see that 23% of the families living in poverty are working families. Working families living on minimal wages are challenges with hard difficulties to provide answers to basic needs as food security, as housing. What has to be done in order to enable the labor market to fulfill the mission of liberating people from poverty?
Again, as Dr. Steinitz suggested, I think you have a very great detonator of this solution in education. And I also have to say that if you look at people who have work and who get paid the same amount of money, and if they have 3 children and the other family has 10 children, of course the family that has 10 children will have to divide among 12 people. So again, the incidence of poverty in these groups is explained also by the way in which they conduct the family life and the way in which they interpret what is the best way to address the future of the family. Now, in every society, and that includes at least in the Arab-Israeli community in Israel, the greater education of the women brings down the fertility rates almost in a direct relationship. In the case of the Haredim is a little different for other reasons, but in the case of the, which is a very large number in the Arab Israelis, there is a very direct connection between the size of the family and the education. So again, that is a very important question. Second is, a country like Israel is going to have to be moving up in the scale of complexity of the type of labor and the type of jobs it is going to have to be adopting, because clearly with competition they chose the knowledge issue. They chose the far-reaching, the cutting edge, but that needs to be constantly fed. And in the post-crisis period, I say there's a cutthroat competition. Everybody's coming out to recover all the enormous losses that happened. And Israel, in order to remain competitive, is going to have to use not only all its installed capacity and all its talent, but also plan ahead and how it's going to be able to maintain this cutting edge. And part of that has to be necessarily the integration of these groups into, yes, better paid jobs, which means jobs that will increase the overall productivity, that will increase the overall competitiveness, and then you have a connection between the society's best interest and then the individual's best interest and Israel's more competitive position in the world. Again, that is a reservoir of talent and labor that very few countries have, and that is at the disposal of Israel, and that, of course, has to be picked up and made to be more equal.
I think that Israel already enjoys quite a good network of social aid, especially in healthcare. We have very good, in comparison to other Western countries, quite a good healthcare systems that all the citizens of Israel are enjoying a very high level of healthcare in comparison to European countries or even to United States. So we have some good things. But I think really, and here I cannot agree more with what Aנחel Gurria is hinting at, or not hinting, declaring once and again, the key word is not aid, but integration. Let's be honest with ourselves. There is poverty in Israel, as Sever mentioned, and today, and the OECD did play a role here, that today it is well recognized and admitted that we have a problem here that we cannot ignore anymore. But the problem is concentrated not 100%, but 80% of the problem. 80% of poverty in Israel is concentrated in two special groups. Among ultra-Orthodox Jews, if you are going to Beitar Elit or Modi'in, you know, the poorest cities or towns in Israel are ultra-Orthodox Jews. They are number one, I mean, in the beginning of the letter. And of course, among Israeli Arabs. Most poverty in Israel is concentrated among ultra-Orthodox Jews and among Israeli Arabs. And the reason is that those two groups, for a variety of reasons, are not well enough integrated in the society, in the general society, and also more so in the Israeli economy. Many of them, their participation is less, participation in the labor market, both especially among Muslim Arab women and among ultra-Orthodox men. And also when they are working, they are paying less, they are working in most of them. So we have to change it dramatically. And it's not easy because there are many cultural and religious reasons here. Those groups are not serving in the IDF, and the IDF is an engine of the Israeli economy and high-tech and so on. We have to change it. In order to change it, we have to push high-tech industries into the Galilee, into the Negev, into Arab cities. We have to convince and to give incentives to the Israeli very strong high-tech industry to send, to develop also, to send fingers into Arab villages and towns and also into ultra-Orthodox. And we are right now working on incentives to high-tech industries that will establish R&D centers or production centers, especially in Arab towns or in ultra-Orthodox towns. We have to improve education, and there are many things to do. Okay. But the problem is not easy, and it will take time. I see a very good chance to make some progress because I meet many Israeli Arabs and many ultra-Orthodox Jews. And they are ready and they understand that it's not just that the government have to pay or to give more to poor people, but that they should be well integrated to the Israeli economy. And since they are interested, and we can work together and listen to each other, I think we have chance here to improve our situation.
I'll really make it short. You asked about the working poor. I think that the Israeli business sector should and can pay much higher wages. I think that the profits of the Israeli business sector are exceptional, and I think that the Israeli business sector can maintain its competitiveness even if and when it pays high wages. This is one remark. Now, the Israeli poor, you're right, Yuval, the Israeli poor, 82% of them are educated, are enlightened, and I'm traveling extensively among them. They want to be integrated in the Israeli society. They want to they are already part of the Israeli society. They need a small push from the government, and the push is coming. And let me finish by saying something I don't believe I say it, but I would say it. The economic policy, the social policy of the Israeli government now is the right one, and it's going in the right direction, and I am quite optimistic. Thank you.
Just a few words, and then I will
only for this remark, it would be good to come from Jerusalem to Haifa.
Don't take it too easy, please.
Just two remarks. One is that we are conducting research on the working poor here in the University of Haifa with colleagues, Sigad, Isikovic, and Buchbinder about it. And we are interviewing people from the Haredi community and the Arab community, etc. I just want to say two findings, main findings. First, they have a solid sense that work is vital for their lives, is crucial for their lives. The second finding, which is bad news, there is a sense that work, the social value of work, and work as a springboard to eradicate poverty, this sense is being eroded. And we have to be careful with that. We need a better ecology of work. The second remark is about the Haifa University, a new program in the Haredi community in Bnei Brak that we have just 300 students. Second degree, we are in the second degree of social work, so we see that there is a big demand of people. Ultra-Orthodox. Yes, sure, in the ultra-Orthodox. I just want to give two students from the audience. Yoav, please, both of them are activists in the partnership Haifa for eradication of poverty. Why just you are excluded today, I see. We have a very heavy schedule, sorry.
Discriminated.
Yes.
Well, my question is for Mr. Angel Gurria, but anyone is welcome to answer. The migration from Africa is in large numbers, and the population in Israel is exceeding 20,000 people, and I assume already 30,000. Probably the weakest and needy in Israel, with everyday reports of murders and rapes on the way here from Africa through Egypt. It is well known that the Israeli government is not doing what it is committed to do by international treaties. I have two questions. The first one is whether the OECD follows and reviews this issue in Israel the same way it follows other social issues here. And the second is that does the OECD have a long-term solution for the migration to developing countries and to Israel in particular?
I couldn't understand what he was saying.
Yeah, let me try. There was a little bit of an echo. So I think, do we follow the migration trends, and then do we have a proposal, a solution? We have been following migration trends in our member countries for 32 years. And we produce a document which I invite you to consult called Migration Outlook. And then we go and then we produce work on labor, and then on education, and then on migration, and then we produce how can you have more integration through education in the labor market and then you add Denmark, or you add Switzerland, or you add Italy, and we know about that. So you put all these things together, and by the time you have that product, which is typically in the form of a book, but basically it tells you things. The statistics not only are numbers, but they tell you what the policy should be, what the integration should be. What about the language, the immersion courses? Don't teach language over 10 years. Teaching language over 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, only language, because this is the best way to integrate. And we have excellent experiences and then very bad experiences of countries where the second generation is less well integrated into society than the first generation in some European countries, which means it's failed. You know, it's a very bad experience. We have to take a hard look at that again. So the answer is yes. And of course, now with Israel being a full member, we're going to follow the questions. We're going to produce all the statistics, including Israel, in all the things we do, education and health and the GDP and nanotechnology and migration also. Now, what about migration in this particular case? We have the aging problem of our societies is one of the most important because it's very, very onerous on the taxes, on the expenses, on the but it's also tremendous in terms of the productivity and the growth of societies. And the question of migration sometimes is the only way, after you have used every other instance, higher productivity, getting all the lists of sickness and disability people, giving all the ways of which you can stimulate people to work, you run out, and then the only thing you have is migration. Now, in the case, of course, of Israel, we know that you are having some limitations now because of the circumstances, because of the markets, etc. The question is, do you have the supply of people who can take over those jobs that you are now being occupied by migrants? The answer, again, this is the third time I say this, but the answer is, in Israel, exceptionally, yes. And therefore, that is something, because you don't have to pay the price of there is always a price in terms of time, cost, and some tension of assimilating and integrating migrants. And also, you already have this now you have a price that you have to integrate for your own citizens, which are the Arab Israelis are Israelis, and all the other groups we mentioned are Israelis. But I think it is, in many societies, the only way in which the societies can see a future rather than shrivel and become smaller and smaller, not in the case of Israel.
My question is for the Minister of Finance, Mr. Dr. Yuval Shטייניץ. In the age of privatization and acceleration in the growth of the third sector, we hear more and more voices which are concerned about the future of the welfare state. The complexity of this issue can result in a situation in which people of high quality who want to work in the social field will choose not to do it because of the fear of not being able to live in a honorable and respectful life when working in this kind of discipline. This situation is also occurring today. The monthly salary of a beginning social worker in Israel, which was decided 16 years ago according to the last salary agreement between the Ministry of Finance and the Social Work Union, is 2,299 shekels. This is 1,500 shekels below minimum wages. My question for Dr. Shטייניץ as a Minister of Finance is, as a minister in the Israeli government, I would like to ask, please, what will you say for a woman or a man who can give a major contribution for the domain of welfare and social life in Israel, but because of financial consideration, will give up the idea of learning and working in the social field?
Thank you. First, I would advise the University of חיפה to improve the microphones here because the echo is impossible. And second, the only thing I could understand is that you are asking me about the salaries of social workers. Yeah, is it? Okay, so I'll address this and I'll mention another point. First, I think you all agree, you know, we just concluded a new deal, a new government הסתדרות, government union agreement about the payment in the public sphere. And we excluded from this deal, it was said in advance, that 3 groups. The first group was social workers are not part of this deal because it's clear for us that soon we have to pay more for social workers. I'm not going to get into details. It's not the place, and I'm also unfamiliar with the real details, but it's clear to us, to the Treasury, that there should be an improvement in the conditions and the salaries of social workers. And I hope that this will encourage people to proceed and people to join because it's very important. So this is, the answer to your question is yes, it is in process now. I want to mention another point that is very relevant to our days, and in a sense it has to do also something with quality and inequality. Today we are we are struggling, the Treasury, to enable Israel to get its share according to Western, one can say even OECD standards in its natural resources. And I'm especially speaking about the gas explorations, the gas discoveries. I am not a socialist. We are not going to nationalize the gas fields, not at all. We think that if we have to encourage investors, and if they invested, and they have to make, and not just to return the investment, but to make very nice profit. But still, after all, it's the natural resources of the people of Israel, all of them together, Jews and Arabs, secular and Orthodox. And if we fail to do what have been done already in Canada and United States, in Holland and Britain, in Norway and Australia, to take reasonable government share, to take the right royalties and tax from those gas reservoirs, if this fortune will remain only in the hands of the few and of some companies and some investors, this will create inequality in Israel, and this will make it harder for us because of some effects, side effects, to promote the economy and to promote equality in Israel. And therefore, for me, it's very important struggle going on today. I was very sorry to hear that some companies, energy companies, are trying to threaten the country that if we will try to take a decent share, like in Britain or like in Holland, they will freeze. It's illegal, but they will freeze or stop all activities. So we won't have nothing in the end. It seems like almost trying to blackmail the state. Here we have to be very firm. It's unthinkable, inconceivable that if Israel is part of the developed world and of the OECD, we should be able, despite the pressures and despite the propaganda, we should be able to do what have been done in Canada and Britain and Holland. They increase the level of the government take for the gas reservoir in order that all the people will enjoy it and not just a few. And this is very, very important struggle going on today. You can see it on the papers, you can see it on the TV.
Thank you very much.
In my view.
I think that the people is behind you. I want to just thank all my colleagues here in the panel for this incredible debate, short but really touching, and I think that we are all very thankful for your